At this difficult and dark time for the world, we're grateful to have the opportunity to celebrate Chanukah these upcoming 8 days, to bring the light of the candles into our lives. This week's Dvar Torah is being dedicated by Madeline and Jerry Eisenberg in loving memory of Madeline's mother, Evelyn Goldstein, Zichron Livracha. Evelyn was an amazing lady who was generous of spirit, kind, and also sharp as a whip. She was a longtime Beth Jacob member who was a devoted attendee of my Monday Torah classes. She also happened to be the proud aunt of Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs, Zecher Tzaddik Livracha. So we remember Evelyn this week and always, and may her neshama have an aliyah. The events of Chanukah are not mentioned anywhere in Tanakh, which makes sense because the Tanakh was canonized in the 400s before the Common Era, and the events of Chanukah take place in the year 164 before the Common Era. Even though it's not mentioned explicitly in Tanakh, but there are a couple of hints. The 25th word of the Torah is Or, as in Vayomer Elokim Yehi Or, which is a hint to the 25th of Kislev, the first day of Chanukah. In Parshat Maseh, when it lists the destinations of the Jewish people in the wilderness, the 25th destination of the Jewish people was Chashmona, remarkably similar to the family of Chashmonaim, who led the revolt against the Syrian Greeks. But Chanukah is not found, and it's a question for us to think about over the course of this holiday. What's really the symbolism of the oil of the Chanukah, and why is there significance of the 25th day? The rabbis say that this is one of the reasons why it's called Chanukah, because Chanu b'chafei, because they rested and were victorious on the 25th. And there's many different themes of the holiday of Chanukah that people focus on. One is that it's a celebration of the miracles and providence of God saving the Jewish people. Another approach is that it's emphasizing the value of military activism and the restoration of political sovereignty. Another idea is that at this difficult time, certainly at this time of darkness, we have the capacity to bring light into the world, to overcome the darkness, no matter how difficult it gets. But let's emphasize and develop a different idea based on the Book of Maccabees. The Book of Maccabees was not part of Tanakh because it doesn't fit the parameters, but it was written by passionate Jews, and we rely on the story of the Book of Maccabees. And in the Book of Maccabees, it says that it was a time of tremendous, severe persecution of the Jewish people. Antiochus wanted to wipe out Judaism and decreed against the Jews to prevent them from observing their religion, our religion, freely. On the 15th of Kislev, that's when the desecration of the sanctuary began. On the 25th of Kislev, it says in the Book of Maccabees, that's when the ultimate desecration occurred, when they brought idols into the inner chamber of the Beit HaMikdash. A few years later, with the dramatic and heroic revolt of the Chashmonaim, they were able to be victorious. They cleaned out the temple grounds, and they decided to rededicate the temple exactly on the 25th of Kislev. They chose the exact day and month that our oppressors, our enemies, had profaned it. They chose that day to dedicate it. And it was of tremendous significance in saying to our oppressors that you tried to desecrate, you tried to destroy, that's the day that we're going to choose to rebuild. And so if we think about the significance of the lights of these candles, so I think that it speaks to the perseverance of our Masorah, of our tradition, in the face of the juggernaut of Hellenism. It shows that even with all the decrees against the Jewish people, making it so difficult to observe our religion and values triumph. And the reason why our religion and values triumphed is because of our willingness to give of ourselves and to fight for it. And it's amazing to think about and hear about the way our ancestors, what they were willing to give to fight for the Masorah, to fight for our tradition. And so if that's the case, when we light the Chanukah candles, yes, it's about the salvation of God, it's about the military victory, it's about bringing light into the world, but also the light represents the light of Torah. And it's the fact that over the course of history, the Torah and the Jewish people have faced many challenges, and it's been difficult at times to observe Torah. But the light of the menorah and the revolt of the Chashmonaim is that they were willing to fight, to have the ability to keep Torah in a maximalist sense. And so this should be an inspiration to all of us to also recommit to the light of Torah, to be proud of it, to stand strong in defending it, and to make sure to transmit it to the next generation. And because when you commit to something fully, and when we're committed to the values of Torah and of Judaism, that's when we can flip things around, and that's when good things happen. There's a very powerful picture that I found from Chanukah 1932 in Kiel, Germany. Rabbi Posner was the last rabbi in Kiel, Germany, and the picture is of the menorah in the window of the Posner family, and the window faces a Nazi building with the swastika on the wall. And so the picture has the menorah, and then in the background across the street is the swastika. And on the back of this picture, Rachel Posner, who was a little girl at the time, wrote, she wrote, "Death to Judah, so the flag says. But Judah will live forever, so the light answers." And whether it's in 1932 in Kiel, or baking matzahs in the Lodz ghetto, or it's keeping the mitzvah of lulav, of daled minim in Kovna, which is a beautiful story about them going out of their way and risking their lives to keep the mitzvah of daled minim, or Mendelovich, Yosef Mendelovich, who was a refusnik from the former Soviet Union, who speaks about his observance of all the mitzvos under the worst conditions, and how one time he saw a heap of straw on Sukkot, and he was able to go there, risking his life, and make a blessing to fulfill the mitzvah of Sukkah. By Yamim Ahem, over the course of the generations, and Bizman Hazeh. And just like the Chashmonaim, who gave of themselves, committed to tradition, and showed the perseverance of Masorah, and because of that commitment, they were able to get rid of all their constraints, and they were able to observe the religion again. So too, when we light the menorah, we should recommit to that tradition over the course of generations, to recognize that we're a link in the chain, and that we have to fight for that Torah which our ancestors were willing to give their lives for. And so too, through the merit of our commitment of bringing light into the world, light to others, we should also be able to get rid of all our constraints that we're suffering during this period of time, to get back to our schedules, to get back to the shul, to get back together and experience this year the miracles of Chanukah and a renewal of the Jewish community and the world. Shabbat Shalom and Chanukah Sameach.